You know, I really shouldn't be agitated this close to the biggest game in 15 years. I shouldn't be upset about something. Something should not be irritating me 5 days before the Super Bowl, in which the Philadelphia Eagles are going to partake in. I should have nothing but good sentiment and nothing but joy and nothing but a look-forward mindset, a mindset that says in 5 days' time, the team that I root for, the Philadelphia Eagles, are going to play in the Super Bowl and have a chance to win the first Super Bowl in franchise history. But here I sit on Tuesday, January 30th, irritated. Welcome into the Trust the Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Tyler Zulli. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let me tell you why I'm irritated. But first, let me say thank you once again for hanging out with us on this episode. This last episode before the Eagles take flight and battle the New England Patriots for Super Bowl 52 and supremacy of the NFL. Thank you for joining me as we break down Super Bowl 52 one final time. We'll really dig in to the X's and O's of this game, just like we did previewing the Minnesota Vikings game. We'll be joined by a guest later in the show. I'll explain who that is and what we're going to talk about at the end of this segment. And that's really all we're going to do today. We're just going to talk about the Eagles and the New England Patriots. But thank you for joining me here on Philly Sports Network. You can find us on YouTube, on Twitter, on iTunes, and a plethora of other outlets that you can find us on wherever you hear this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, whatever it is that you're listening on. Just enjoy the show, or at least I hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for hanging out with us. But let me tell you why I'm irritated today. I am irritated because I'm sick and tired of hearing the same rants over and over and over again about stupid, non-objective stats, totally missing the point of what a Super Bowl statistic should be. Talking about trends and talking about setting trends and what the past has shown. If you want to tell me that the Eagles are a 4 or a 4.5 or a 5-point underdog because the New England Patriots have done X, Y, and Z and the Eagles are without A, B, and C, okay, let's talk. But the issue that I've been having is the completely arbitrary, misleading, and quite frankly, just dull stats that people have decided to dig up and unearth out of absolutely nowhere and try to throw them into the Super Bowl hoopla and make them a big deal. Because in reality, these stats do not matter. And I'm talking about those stats that your friend brings up that he saw on Twitter somewhere and retweeted it because he wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be the guy with the cool new information that says the Eagles are going to lose because, or the Eagles are going to win because. Here are two stats that have driven me up a wall the last 2 weeks. And possibly because of the fact that I'm in sports media, people think that it's relevant to bring it up to me. But guess what? It's really not. The two stats that have been just ridiculously overstated and oversaturated to the point where they didn't matter to begin with, but now take on a life of their own as some kind of ridiculous moniker. The first one being that no leading passer in the regular season of the NFL has ever won the Super Bowl. The quarterback that threw for the most yards in an NFL regular season is 0-51 in attempts to win the Super Bowl. Now, of course, not all of those quarterbacks made the Super Bowl, but even those that did failed to capture the Lombardi Trophy. Tom Brady has a chance to break that trend this season by becoming the first quarterback to lead the league in passing yards and then go on to win the Super Bowl. Does that stat really mean anything to you? Are you going to sleep better at night because you know that stat? Are you going to sleep better at night that when Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl, you could remember off the top of your head that in Super Bowl 52 on February 4th, 2018, Tom Brady bucked a trend and said that the stat that says that no leading passer has ever won a Super Bowl is now null and void because Tom Brady did it? Or if on the flip side, are you going to say, well, the trend continues, boys and girls, 0 for 52? No! You're going to say that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. You're not going to worry about Tom Brady not winning the Super Bowl, being the 52nd consecutive quarterback to lead the league in passing yards and not win the Super Bowl. That statistic is pointless. It's so utterly meaningless to the game itself. Do you think Tom Brady's thinking about, well, gee whiz, I might be the first quarterback to be the leading passer in the regular season and win the Super Bowl? Tom Brady doesn't care. Tom Brady has no care in the world. Because at the end of the day, if Tom Brady wins ring number 6, do you really think he cares about his passing yards? And if Tom Brady loses for the 3rd time in 8 tries, do you really think it's going to tarnish his record because he was the leading passer in 2008, 17, 18? No, he doesn't care. And neither should you, because that stat is meaningless. Now let's get to the second one that's really been bothering me. 8 out of the last 10 underdogs have covered their Super Bowl line spread. Why should I care? Why should I care that the Seattle Seahawks didn't cover the line? Why should I care that the Carolina Panthers didn't cover the line? Why should I care that the Denver Broncos didn't cover the line? Why should I care if the Philadelphia Eagles cover the line? Like I said, the Eagles are getting 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, whatever line that you've got and you've put your money on. Why do the Eagles care? Because if the Eagles lose the game by 2 points or 3 points, and you could say, well, the Eagles covered the spread. No. Again, no. You're going to say, this is absolute BS. The Eagles lost the Super Bowl. And if the Eagles win the Super Bowl and you put money on the Patriots, are you going to say, well, shucks, I wish I would have won my bet, or I wish I would have not won my bet for the Eagles to lose the Super Bowl, or something along those lines? I don't think so. I'm not putting any money on the game, but if I were, I'll tell you who I'm going to pick later in the day. You'll get my prediction later in the day. But if I were to put money on this game and I were to turn out wrong either way with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, I'd be happy. You know why? Because the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And that's really all that it comes down to. All right, let me get away from that now, because that really got me heated, and that's not how I want to do an entire hour show when we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles 60 minutes of football away from winning a Super Bowl and 5 days away from competing in said Super Bowl. Because really what I want to get to in this first segment, before we break down the game, before we get into the X's and the O's and the Jims and the Joes, or whatever that saying is that I think is just totally outdated. Before we get into all of that, I really want to hit that raw emotion one more time. Because I liken an NFL season and the Super Bowl itself to a school trip to the zoo. At some point in your schooling days, you took a field trip to the zoo. And I bet you that your parents signed you up for it and paid a couple of bucks. And it got you on the bus and it got you into the zoo and you got to see the animals. And at the end of the day, you went back to school and you had to write a little write-up on it and what you learned about the animals that day. Well, the NFL has taken 51 trips to the zoo. And everybody gets on the bus. Every single team gets on the bus to begin the year. Now, some fall asleep in their seats. Some get kicked off the bus for bad behavior. Some don't make the bus. They're late for the bus, like the Cleveland Browns. But there are a select few teams that are on the bus. And the Eagles have taken the bus ride 51 times. Because like I said, everybody gets on the bus. So forget missing the bus. Everybody's on the bus. So the Eagles have taken the bus ride 51 times. This is the 52nd time the Eagles have taken the bus ride to the zoo. Now, twice, now being the third time, the Eagles were able to get off the bus. They didn't fall asleep. They didn't forget their lunch. They didn't get held back by the teacher for pulling somebody's hair on the bus. They got off the bus and into the waiting area, into where the loading and unloading zone is. And twice, this year being the third time, they've gotten to that area. But every time they've gotten to that area to this point, they forgot their money. They didn't have enough money to get into the zoo and see the animals. 2018 needs to be the year the Eagles finally have enough currency to get into the zoo. Because we go along on that bus ride with the Eagles. We're not on the team, and we don't get paid by the team, but we go along that ride. And every time the Eagles fail to get off the bus, it's heartbreaking. But every time the Eagles get into the waiting area, into the lobby, into the ticket window area, and don't have enough money to get into the zoo, that's gut-wrenching. That's like getting a knife jammed into your stomach. Because when the Eagles fail to make the playoffs, when the Eagles don't get off the bus because they're asleep, or they're not allowed to get on the bus for bad behavior, a.k.a. a bad record. Well, we say it was a bad year. This team stunk. This guy stunk. Fire this guy. Cut that guy. Blow it all up. Start it again. But when the team gets to the point where they're in the lobby, in the waiting area, and they are just waiting to go into the zoo, and you find out that they don't have enough money, you're crushed. Because you wanted to see the animals. And the animals, of course, being a Super Bowl trophy. But you don't get to see the animals. You just get to watch from outside the gates, where you don't really see anything other than maybe a ticket window and an information kiosk and a bathroom and maybe some birds flying around. But you don't want to see birds flying around. You want to see alligators. You want to see tigers. You want to see the monkeys. You want to see the elephants. You want to see the giraffes. You want the Lombardi Zoo. You want the complete zoo visit. And for the first time in 14 years, the Eagles have a chance to reach into their pockets, pull out some money, and say, do we have enough currency to get into the zoo? And if they have enough currency to get into the zoo, then believe me, folks, Philadelphia is going to turn into a zoo itself. Because deep down in the heart of Philadelphia, we celebrated the 2008 Phillies World Series parade, and it was a blast. A couple million people at that parade. We celebrated the Flyers making their run to the Stanley Cup in 2010. A team that had to win a shootout against Henrik Lundqvist to get into the playoffs, to defeat the 2 seed, to come back from 3 games to none to defeat the Boston Bruins, to win the conference finals, to go play the Chicago Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup. We celebrated that. Now, I was a little young for 2001. I don't remember the celebrations nearly as much for the Sixers. But I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, if the Eagles were to win this football game, those parades would pale in comparison. Those would look like perfectly conduced marches, perfectly peaceful marches. They would look like a couple of people walking down the street in comparison to what the Eagles parade would be. I would wager a guess to say if the Eagles were to win this game, there'd be 4 million people in the streets of Philadelphia. I don't even know if the streets of Philadelphia hold 4 million people, but my assumption would be there'd be 4 million people. Here's what this game means to this city. We know that the Eagles have never won a Super Bowl. I just spent 10 minutes comparing it to a trip to the zoo. But what this game and what this team mean to this city, mean to the backbone of Philadelphia, mean to the working class men and women of this city, the people that bust their butts from sunup to sundown to make ends meet, to save up just enough coin to buy season tickets, to buy packages to watch the Eagles, to go to the bar each and every Sunday to watch the Philadelphia Eagles play. What this means to this city is more than words can describe. What this means to the city transcends the people on the city streets. It transcends every Philadelphian and every outskirts suburb and everybody in northern Delaware and everybody in southern Jersey and every implant across the country. And you've seen it. They're in LA. They're in Phoenix. They've invaded Texas. There's fans in Florida. They are everywhere. But what this means transcends every single one of those people in every single corner of the country and beyond. Because this game is for the guys and gals that didn't make it to this point. Those that passed prior to this game being played. Much like 2004 lead up and the game leading up to, or the week leading up to the game was about those that came before us and did not see a Super Bowl title. 2018, February 4th, this Sunday is for more than me. It's for more than you. It's for your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your mom, your grandmother, your father, your grandfather, who didn't make it to see today, who are looking down on whatever eternal rest that you consider the proper eternal rest. And they are watching this game. Because this game means more than you and I. This game means Philly. Now, I'm not one to sit here and say the New England Patriots have 5 Super Bowl titles in the last 17 seasons. They've been to 8 under Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I'm not one to say that. What I mean to say is this means more to Philly this year than what it does to anybody else this season. Because this team has endured and continues to endure and will continue to endure until the final buzzer goes off and the horn sounds and they may be Lombardi Trophy champions. They may hoist that Lombardi Trophy and be Super Bowl champions at the end of Sunday. We're 5 days away from that. 5 days away from a potential Super Bowl title. And that's all that there needs to be said. We'll take a quick break on the other side. We're going to be joined by 97.5 The Fanatic's Geoff Mosher as he breaks down the game a little bit with us. Stick around for that and much more. This is Trust the Podcast. All right, another segment here on Trust the Podcast. Welcome back, Philly Sports Network Nation. I am Tyler Zulli. Now joined alongside me is a good friend of mine, a co-host on 97.5 The Fanatic, good writer for FanRagSports.com as well. Just an all-around football mind, Geoff Mosher. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today.
Anytime. Always good to be with you, Tyler.
So I made an analogy about this Eagles run to the Super Bowl, and I had... It kind of is a little convoluted and a little odd, but just bear with me and see what you think.
I'm used to that from you, by the way.
That's fair. I mean, we've worked together in the past, and you understand my methodology a little bit. I kind of likened a football season to a trip to the zoo. Mm-hmm. And there have been 52, now going on a 50-second trip to the zoo. And the Eagles, for 49 out of the last 51 trips to the zoo, didn't get off the bus. And twice they got to the ticket window, but never have been able to get inside the zoo and see the animals. And, of course, the zoo being a Super Bowl win. How do the 2017-18 Philadelphia Eagles get to the zoo and go inside the zoo?
I guess to use your analogy, they have to scrounge up enough money to get in, right? Because whatever was keeping them out of the zoo for the first 51 years, whether it was not having enough money or not being organized enough or I don't know. I don't know what kind of things would keep you out of the zoo other than not having your money. But they have the currency this year. So now it's all about paying up and not coming up short. I think that this team, more so than the 2004 team even, which was a very dominant team, and maybe more so than the 80 team, I just think this team has more components to win a Super Bowl than maybe any other Eagles team before.
And we've done that comparison so many times. 04, 2017. Which team is better total? Which team's better on the line? Who had a better quarterback? And I think the narrative keeps coming back to, at the top end, the 2004 team was more talented. But there's something special about this team that would put them over the top as opposed to that 04 team.
I mean, what sets this team apart, really, it's their bread and butter, the offensive line, the defensive line. If you remember the Super Bowl in 2004, they were exposed a little bit up front, offensive line, pressure down the middle, Hank Fraley being the center. I think Artis Hicks left guard. I forget again anymore the interior line, but that's where the Eagles were beat. You're not beating the Eagles anywhere on their offensive line this year. Even if Hala Vaitai isn't at his best, you can put Brent Selleck out there, but that's their strength. They can run, they can pass, and they don't have a singular identity as an offense. You know, the Patriots are famous for saying, we're going to take out your number one option and make the rest beat you, but what is the Eagles' number one option? As they showed you against Atlanta, if they just want to beat you with the run and then let that set up the RPO for the quarterback, they'll do that. As they showed you against Minnesota with the number one defense, if they want to air the ball out against you, the offensive line is going to give Nick Foles that protection, and he was able to do that. So they're just so much more deep than I can remember on the offensive line and defensive line, whereas most teams hit you with it, like the Giants, who took down the Patriots twice, right? They hit you with 3 pass rushers. They either hit you with Strahan, Umenyiora, and Tuck, or came back with Tuck, Umenyiora, and JPP, right? This team can hit you with Cox, Graham, Chris Long, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox. Did I mention Cox? I'm sorry, I did.
Allen.
Bo Allen has been there. I mean, they've got 6 or 7 guys. Tim Jernigan, who can rush the passer. And that, to me, means they shouldn't get tired.
Well, it's a team with 6 guys on the defensive line that recorded 20 or more quarterback hurries.
Right.
No other team in the NFL had more than 1.
Vinny Curry, I forgot to throw that in.
And
He's
Vinny
had a
Curry,
great year this year.
Doesn't get the numbers.
No, but he
he's
has the
been
pressures.
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Been
this
great
season.
in the playoffs. Yeah, they can hit you with so many different guys.
Well, and you mentioned the offensive line, and that's something that I wanted to bring up to you. And you look at it at the beginning of the season, and Pro Football Focus rated it as the number 1 offense in the NFL. And we sat here in September and went, are they really the best team in the NFL, the best line in the NFL? You have Brandon Brooks and Stefan Wisniewski or Chance Warmack. We had no idea who
at the
was
time.
Going
It was
to be
Alan Barber. Yeah,
Alan Barber at the time before they made the trade. So these two guys coming together and solidifying the offensive line, and us being able to say when they run that pull, they pull with the guard and get to the outside. That's a play that works in the Eagles' favor, as opposed to earlier in the season where Chance Warmack was a liability.
Correct. They have an identity. They are a good offensive line. They can hit you up the middle. They can get you on the stretch play. They can play action and just block well from there. I feel like that's what gives the Patriots don't have a great organic pass rush, meaning like they don't have a front 4 like the Eagles have that are going to hit home and pressure the quarterback. At least they haven't had it all year, and the Eagles haven't really shown vulnerability to it all year. So the Patriots, I imagine, are going to have to blitz a little bit or figure out ways to drum up pressure on Nick Foles, and that's what you want. You want to be able to capitalize on one-on-ones on the perimeter because you know that team is being ultra-aggressive up front. That's what the Vikings are. They have a great front 4 rush. They like to play those linebackers close. They like to send Anthony Barr a lot, and there were one-on-one matchups that the Eagles were able to exploit.
So you talk about that pass rush, and on the other side, of course, is the greatest quarterback in the history of the game in Tom Brady. He's got 5 rings. This is his 8th appearance in the Super Bowl. It's nothing new for New England to be there.
Correct.
But the mantra seems to be about Tom Brady, well, if you pressure him, he becomes human. But then the stats don't back that up. The stats say that he's got a 62% completion percentage when he gets blitzed. He has the 3rd highest QBR in 2017 when he gets blitzed behind, ironically enough, Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson.
Right.
So do you bring extra heat, or do you allow that front 4 that's been so good all year just to get home?
Well, the problem would be conflating stats versus the blitz versus stats versus pressure, because pressure and the blitz are not necessarily one and the same. The Eagles do a great job of pressuring quarterbacks without blitzing. And so, yeah, Brady is going to beat the blitz. He's going to have the rhythm and the timing and the ability to throw the ball into a spot that he knows is going to be vacated by a blitzer, which is why I think what you'll see from the Eagles is mostly rush 4, cover with 7. Make it difficult. That was the formula by the Giants 2 times and beating them. Like I mentioned, those 3 pass rushers each time. It was beating them with a solid front 4 rush and then covering on the back end. I think that the Eagles will have to do that the same way. And they are certainly equipped to win games that way or to win a Super Bowl that way.
Well, and it's rush 4, drop 7, but my question is who in particular is a part of that 7? You know the constants, in the cornerback and safety position, but the one player to me that really looked like a liability in the NFC Championship game, and he was swiftly taken off the field after the first drive, was Najee Good.
Yeah.
Now, I would assume that Donnell Ellerbe will be back and ready to play in this game, at least in some capacity, but with a guy like Rob Gronkowski, who you don't know if he's going to play, but under the assumption that he does, do you leave that middle linebacker on the field, or do you just go right into your base nickel package right away?
I think their base package should probably be and will probably be nickel and dime. I mean, your third linebacker, you're going to have Kendricks and you're going to have Nigel Bradham out there. And for most of it, you'll probably just have Bradham, and what you'll have is Malcolm Jenkins play that dime linebacker role. Corey Graham comes in. The only reason to want to be in base is in either goal line situations, right, or 4th and 1, or even if you think the Patriots are going to try to run the ball, but in this, or an opponent, right? In this case, if the Patriots want to run, it's not like they got big bruising running backs.
Right.
And the Eagles have the number 1 rush defense, despite playing a lot of nickel and dime all year. If they can't stop the Patriots' running game out of nickel and dime, then they have a problem.
Well, and the Patriots' running game seems to almost be transcendent of actually running the football. They have such a screen-heavy pass offense that it almost feels like it's a running game.
It does. Their screen game becomes the run. Right? They don't go I formation. They don't have LeGarrette Blount anymore, where they even try to feed him as much as they have. I mean, they've got a committee with Burkhead, and they've got James White, who is a good ball pass catcher. Same thing with Deion Lewis. They don't really have the ground and pound types. So I would think the Eagles are going to be in nickel and dime almost 80% of the game.
So we mentioned Gronk. We mentioned the fact that they going primarily in nickel and dime. If Gronk does play, and even if he's at 80%, he's still probably the best receiving option that the Patriots have.
Yep.
Who do the Eagles stick on him?
Well, that to me is the big question, and I would think that it's not a one-on-one. I would think if it is man, you're going to see a lot of Malcolm Jenkins on him. And again, Malcolm coming in to line up against the tight end, with Corey Graham then coming in to replace Malcolm at safety in that dime position. But I suspect that Jim will bracket Rob. Now, the issue with that is using 2 guys on 1 for Rob means you have to leave either Darby or Mills alone on Brandon Cooks. That is a matchup that would be concerning.
Especially with the fact that the Eagles have bit on the double move so frequently this season.
That's correct. But you know what? In order for a double move to have to be executed and pulled off, then Brady's going to need more than the requisite 2.1 seconds to throw the ball, and that's where the front 4 rush comes in and how important it's going to be.
So let's flip the field a little bit and take a look at the Eagles' offense, and we're going to try to get inside the minds of 3 very brilliant quarterback gurus, and Doug Peterson, John DeFilippo, and Frank Reich, who apparently dialed up this, and you mentioned it on the air today, and you used a great quote on your Twitter about how Doug Peterson, the best trick that he ever made was disguising the fact that they were going to run the football,
right,
and came out and threw the football down the Vikings' throats. They made up this great game plan for Nick Foles that seemed to work. Do you run a similar game plan, or is there a different philosophy because now the Patriots have 2 weeks to prepare?
You know what? That's a great question. I wish I knew. I don't know what course of action that Doug is going to feel he needs to take. Here's my gut. My gut says that the Patriots don't have great pass rushers, and that Doug is going to feel that he can win some one-on-one matchups. But the Patriots do have really good corners in Gilmore and Malcolm Butler. So my thought process is to attack the linebacker, attack the middle area, and try to get Zach Ertz and Nelson Aguilar and Trey Burton, which is kind of what we said about Minnesota, right? And yet he still was able to attack with Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey. So, I really don't know. I say this, Doug has probably done less of a game plan that's dictated on the opponent and more on what his strengths are. His strengths are his offensive line, offensively. He's going to have time, and it wouldn't surprise me if he lets Nick just kind of sit back there and try to pick the Patriots apart.
I guess if we really knew the definitive answer, we probably wouldn't be sitting in the studio.
We'd
be in the
here,
Eagles
yeah.
war room right now with those guys scheming for a Super Bowl championship chance. So I have to ask you before I let you go, because I'd be remiss if I didn't, and I would be neglecting my duties if I didn't ask a guest to a week and a half before the show is set to, or the game is set to be played.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Eagles win this game? And if so, what's your score?
I think the Eagles win. I do. I really do. And you know me well enough to know whether I do shows or just talk.
You're not a homer.
Not a homer.
Means.
You know, I've never been. I've tried to always look at things objectively. I thought the Falcons, I predicted the Falcons to win by 3 in the divisional round, so I felt it was going to be a close game. The Eagles won, obviously. So I look at this game, and I think the Eagles are going to win. I just think that 99 times out of 100, the team that's strongest in the trenches wins. I get that there's a big gap at quarterback there, but that's part of being stronger in the trenches. You get to affect that quarterback. So I think the Eagles will win. I have trouble time thinking of a score. Like, you know,
still too far away to come up with one.
How about 24-20?
24-20. That would be that would be a little bit of just revenge, considering it was 24-21. What, 15 years ago?
It was. Now, if the Eagles win a Super Bowl, predicting the score doesn't matter.
I don't care if it's 2-0 or they win 100-0.
Who cares, right?
You know, and the thought process of, oh, well, I don't feel as good because it's not Carson Wentz.
Right.
I don't care if Frank the Waterboy has to come in and play quarterback.
Let
if
him
the
run
Eagles
the
win
wishbone.
the game,
you know, like,
if the Eagles win the game, that's all that matters, because we all know that Philadelphia is going to be bedlam, and the parade will be, you know, we were here for the 08 Phillies parade, and it was a great time. But this town bleeds green.
It won't come close.
It bleeds green.
It will be unbelievable.
And places will be shut down for days.
I look forward to it.
Well, Geoff, thanks so much for your time. Great stuff as always. You know, it was a blast having you on, and maybe in 2 weeks when we get an Eagles parade, we'll have you back on for a little wrap-up show.
I'd love to do it, definitely.
Geoff Mosher, 97.5 The Fanatic and FanRagSports.com. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll continue to break down this game a little bit further. I'll give you my prediction on Super Bowl 52 and much more. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. This is Trust the Podcast. Welcome back, Philly Sports Network, into Trust the Podcast. I'm Tyler Zulli. Thanks so much for joining us today and each and every week of this weekly podcast. We are 5 days away from Super Bowl 52. And I think we've done enough of the heart, the soul, the passion, the emotional side of this game. I think you all understand what this game means to me, what this game means to you, what this game means to Philadelphia. We've really hit the entire spectrum. And then we just got some words from Geoff Mosher of 97.5 The Fanatic, who really broke down some X's and O's, how the Eagles can defend a guy like Rob Gronkowski with the assumption that he's going to play. What to do with Tom Brady, to blitz or not to blitz, that is the question of 2018, and so much more. So a big thank you to Geoff Mosher for that interview that he just did with us. But let's really break down kind of the meat and potatoes of this game. That's what you want to hear 5 days before a game starts. You want to hear how the Eagles fare against the Patriots. Offensive line versus defensive line, vice versa. Corners versus receivers. Trenches, quarterback play, head coaching play. And I think this game really boils down to the fact that you need to understand that the gap between Tom Brady and Nick Foles is large. And the gap between Doug Peterson and Bill Belichick is very small. This season, I don't know what the future is going to hold for Doug Peterson. I also don't know what the future is going to hold for Bill Belichick. But I do know this. Doug Peterson has been unbelievably successful in nearly everything that he has done to this point in 2018. If Doug Peterson is not the primary reason for the Eagles reaching the Super Bowl, and that could be because of the play of the defense, and it could be because of the play of Carson Wentz, he is a top 3 candidate as to why the Eagles are playing for Super Bowl 52 and not golfing somewhere. But he doesn't get all the credit. Jim Schwartz deserves a lot of credit for this success that the Eagles have been on. This run that the Eagles have made to Super Bowl 52, despite being underdogs in the NFC divisional round, despite being underdogs in the NFC conference title game and winning by 31, and now being underdogs again. They've embraced that underdog mentality. But let's really go into the details of this game. Because much like in the divisional round and much like in the conference championship round, I think the Super Bowl is going to be a close game. It's going to be a close game because these two teams are not the David and Goliath that the national pundits want to make them out to be. This isn't Nick Foles, the guy that had a 27-touchdown year 4 years ago and had since contemplated retirement, versus the greatest of all time. Because at the end of the day, Nick Foles and Tom Brady will not be on the field at the same time for a millisecond of the game, during the game. They'll be on the field for the national anthem. They'll probably be on the field for the handshake at the end. But those two will not be on the field at the same time during any live action play. So it doesn't come down to Nick Foles versus Tom Brady. It comes down to the Eagles defense versus the Patriots offense, and vice versa. It comes down to Jim Schwartz versus Josh McDaniels. It comes down to John DeFilippo, Frank Reich, and Doug Peterson versus Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia. And those are some really intriguing matchups. This is the part of the show where we kind of bog you down with some stats. And the New England Patriots now have been in 8 Super Bowls. This is the 8th, under Bill Belichick and with Tom Brady. In 7 previous Super Bowls, of which they are 5-2, mind you. It's not like they're 1-6. It's not like they're 8-0. They're 7-0. They're 5-2, which is an unbelievable feat at any point, at any juncture in NFL history. The point differential for the New England Patriots, who are 3 games over 500 in Super Bowl play under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, is plus 12. 7 games, of which they've won 5, and they're plus 12. Let's break this down. In 2001, when they beat the Rams, they won on a field goal. In 2003, when they beat the Panthers, again, they won on a field goal. In 2004, when they beat the Eagles, not a game-winning field goal, but won by a field goal. So in 3 Super Bowl wins, paired with no Super Bowl losses, the New England Patriots are plus 9. Then you have back-to-back Super Bowl appearances that were lost to the New York Giants, of which they lost by a field goal and 4 points. So now you're down to plus 5 and a 3-2 record. Then we'll finish that off with 2 straight wins against the Seattle Seahawks and the overtime walk-off winner against the Atlanta Falcons. Winners by 4 and winners by 6. And that's where you get your 12. 12 points separates the New England Patriots from being 5-2 and 2-5 in Super Bowl play. So that has to bode well for the Eagles. I told you that we're not going to get bogged down with pointless statistics that don't mean anything at the beginning of the show. Those stats mean something. Those stats prove to you that the Eagles and Patriots will likely be in a dogfight throughout this game. And whether the Patriots win or whether the Eagles win, I will bet you this game comes down to less than a touchdown. Less than 7 points separates these two teams. Because you have the 2 number 1 seeds going into the playoffs. 2 teams with a bye. 2 teams that won 13 games. 2 teams that rode hot quarterback play the entire season. Now the difference is the Eagles have a better defense. The Eagles have a better defensive line and secondary than the New England Patriots. And that's how the Eagles win this game. By getting to Tom Brady, as Geoff mentioned earlier, with their 4 down linemen and maybe a 5th guy every once in a while, and not bringing 6 to try to disrupt Tom Brady because he's great against the pressure. by bringing 4 and getting to Brady and beating a New England Patriots offensive line that, while it's not bad, I wouldn't call it good either. I would call it average. Average to good. But I wouldn't go further than good. Against an Eagles defensive line that in the entire season has been great to elite. On their worst days, the Eagles' pass rush has been good. And on their best days, they've been best of the decade. So what does that say for the Eagles? It says to me that the Eagles will be in this game. Despite being 5-point underdogs or 4.5 or 4 or 3.5, whatever Vegas line you got it at, the Eagles will be in this game. You know what the Patriots offense is about. We all know what the Patriots offense is about. Tom Brady picks apart defenses. They use the screenplay as an addition to a run game that is not formidable. A true run game is not how the Patriots run the football. That sounds so ridiculous and contrived, but it's the truth. The Patriots use the screen as an outlet to the running game, as part of the running game, and they're so successful at it because they run the draw play and they run some trap plays just enough to lull you in and make you blitz or bring an extra guy or come after the running back, and then they flip it off. And they're so good at holding it and hiding it. And you never, ever, ever see the New England Patriots get called for holding, get called for clipping, get called for block in the back, get called for illegal man downfield when they run a screenplay. Why? Because they're perfect at it. They execute it with Tom Brady and a bunch of guys. They had Corey Dillon one year when they beat the Eagles. Other Super Bowl runs have been with LeGarrette Blount. They're now with Dion Lewis and James White. They had been with Antoine Smith to begin their run. In between were guys like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. They don't use these elite running backs other than Corey Dillon, but they do it to perfection. And that is what the Eagles are going to need to watch, is Rob Gronkowski, double moves, and screens. And if you get pressure with your front four, this defense holds a very good chance of helping the Eagles win this game. Now, what you cannot expect from the Eagles is another Nick Foles day that like we saw 2 weeks ago. Because that was the best game Nick Foles has ever played in his existence. High school, middle school, Madden, it doesn't matter. That was the best game that Nick Foles has ever played, including the 7-touchdown day against the Oakland Raiders. That was the best game that he ever played, and we've said it a million times. It's been all over the media. He was Wentz-esque. There were a couple of plays where he stepped up in the pocket and made Carson Wentz-type plays. You may not get that again from Nick Foles. He may regress back towards the mean. But you don't have to get great Nick Foles. You just can't get terrible Nick Foles. And you have a chance to win this game. Because the New England defense is average. They give up 4.8 yards per play on first and on second down, and 4.5 on third down. Now, I'm not a math wizard, but if you take 4.8 and 4.8, that gives you 9.6. That puts you in third and inches. Add another 4.5, and you've got yourself a fresh set of downs. If you dink and dunk your way down the field, and it is Super Bowl boring to the max, and the Eagles win the game 17-10 by scoring a couple of touchdowns on 2 80-yard drives and hold the Patriots to 10 points or 13 points or 14 points, are you going to look at this game and go, man, that was a boring game? You're going to look at this game and go, the Eagles just won the freaking Super Bowl. If they win the game 3-0 or 98-97, you don't care. At least you shouldn't care. Because at the end of the day, if the Eagles take home the Lombardi Trophy, that is all that matters. I mentioned those stats on first and second down. That looms large. Because unlike the Minnesota Vikings, who were unbelievably successful on first down and on third down, on the defensive front. The New England Patriots struggle on first down, especially in the passing game. It's going to sound extremely odd, and it's going to sound totally against the grain to say that you should throw the ball with Nick Foles on first down to open up the run. But in reality, that's the game that the Eagles are looking at. New England's allowed 1,900 passing yards on first down alone and 12 passing touchdowns. They blitz. It seems a lot on first down. 14 sacks on 1st and 10 alone. But what that tells me is if you run short to intermediate passing routes and get the ball out of Nick Foles' hand quickly on first down, you are going to force the New England corners. You're going to force Malcolm Butler to play up on Alshon Jeffrey, to play up on Nelson Aguilar, to play up on Torrey Smith. And that's when you hit him with the double move. The double move that we have preached all playoffs long. Jalen Mills, please don't bite. Ronald Darby, please don't bite. Why don't the Eagles turn around and use that offensively themselves? Hit him with the slant. Hit him with the hitch. Hit him with the slant. Then hit him with the double move. Because there's absolutely no reason to think that Nick Foles can't dink and dunk his way down the field and go to a double move to Torrey Smith for a touchdown. On a team that gives up a plethora of yards on first down, especially from their 20 to midfield. It's a defense that we have seen time in and time out clamp down when they need to. They are the utter encompassing, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. There's a word that I'm looking for, and it's slipping my mind right now. They are the pure essence of bend but don't break this season. This is a Patriots team that gives up 3,000 yards, or gave up 3,000 yards this year, from their 21 to midfield. And a ton of them have come on first down. But then the opposing offense gets to midfield, and it's like a switch is flipped. And all of a sudden, they're a completely different defense. They're a defense that gives up 1,900 yards from the 50 to the end zone. So explain to me how the New England Patriots give up 3,000 yards in a 29-yard span over the course of 16 games, and then give up 1,900 yards from a 50-yard span from the 50 to the end zone. Why? Because Matt Patricia is a genius at making adjustments. He understands that his team is going to get beat in the middle of the field and over the middle from the 20 to the 50. And he sees these 5, 6, 7 plays happen and takes it into account and uses his Jimmy Neutron-type brain to wrap things together, and he puts an end to drives. He's done it his entire career. There's a reason he's going to become a head coach when this season ends, because he's a brilliant, brilliant defensive coordinator. But there is a way to beat the New England Patriots because they don't have the skill set that a lot of other defenses have. If you were to say, pick the 3 best defenses and rank the defenses in terms of talent that the Eagles have faced in 2018 playoffs, of course it's the Minnesota Vikings at number 1. I'd venture to say it's the Atlanta Falcons at number 2, which leaves you the New England Patriots at number 3 as the worst of the 3 defenses. They scored 15 points on Atlanta. Okay, it happened. Nick Foles wasn't great. The wind was probably a factor. They turned the ball over 4 times. You saw what happened when they didn't turn the ball over 4 times. They scored 31 points on offense against the Minnesota Vikings, the number 1 defense in the country. So what makes any kind of difference against this New England team, other than the fact that Matt Patricia is unbelievable at making adjustments? Throw against them early. It sounds insane to say with Nick Foles a quarterback, but throw against the New England Patriots on first down and set up the run. That old saying, set up the run or establish the run to set up the pass, Well, maybe in this game, establish the pass to set up the run and see how it goes. I'm not talking about taking shots downfield on first down on the first play of the game. I'm not talking about running a flea flicker. I'm not talking about running some kind of crazy play where you try to get Zach Ertz open in the middle of the field and it gets tipped and it's picked off. I'm talking about dinking and dunking your way down the field and picking up 6 here and 4 here and 8 there and 10 here and 3 here and running out the clock and not allowing the perfect weapon to get on the field. Because at the end of the day, if Nick Foles walks off the field late in the fourth quarter with a lead, any kind of lead, I don't care if it's 1 point, and the Patriots only have to kick a field goal to win the game. If Nick Foles walks off the field late in the fourth quarter with a lead intact, I am willing to go to bat with the Eagles' defense against Tom Brady for one stop. I'm willing to take that chance because I have faith in the Eagles' defense just as I have all season long. Now, the offensive woes have scared me, and Nick Foles scared me at times. I'm not going to sit here and say I was gung-ho Super Bowl all the way because I didn't think they were going to beat the Atlanta Falcons. I continually said I'm speaking a win into existence because that was my way of justifying that, well, I did my best. I did everything I could to propel this team to a victory. And I know it's not much, but it was my thought process. I feel more comfortable now about winning a Super Bowl than I did about beating the Atlanta Falcons in the divisional round, than I did about beating the Minnesota Vikings in the conference title game. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about this team. There's some kind of swagger about this team. There is some kind of aura about this team that refuses to be denied. They play that dog mentality. They play into it and they feed into it. It's bulletin board material. They use that dog-like mentality to get what they want. They've been told they suck all year long. We've mentioned that 100 times. And they continue to come back better and better and better every time and win the game that they can and win the division and get the bye and win the divisional round and win the conference title and go to the Super Bowl. So why can't this team beat New England? Why can't this team beat Tom Brady with the formula that I laid out for you? 4-man rush, get to Brady. Chew time off the clock. Keep the greatest quarterback of all time on the sideline. You do that, you've got a formula for success. And with that, I guess it's time to make a prediction. And I can't believe I'm doing this, because I just talked up the Eagles' defense and their swagger and their offense and Doug Peterson and how they can beat New England and how they could beat the Patriots in so many ways. We talked to Geoff Mosher, who took the Eagles as well. Didn't give us a score, but he took the Eagles. I don't know. This game's going either way, and it's close. This game is going to come down to the wire, and this game is going to be under 6 points. The winner of this game is going to walk off the field with less than 27 points. I'd love to take the Eagles. I really would. And I'd like to speak a win into existence. And when you talk to me as Tyler the fan, I'm going to tell you the Eagles are winning the game. But when you talk to me as Tyler the broadcaster, I just have this sinking feeling in my stomach that this game doesn't end well for the Philadelphia Eagles. That this game goes the way of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and the Patriots win a 6th Super Bowl title. Will it be the last of Tom Brady? I don't know. Can the Eagles win this game? Without a doubt. There is no doubt in my mind that the Eagles could win the Super Bowl. And I hope to be proven wrong. And I'm sorry to do this, but I'm taking the New England Patriots. And I'm taking the Patriots to win this game 24-20. And put an end to a magical Eagles season. And I hope when I talk to you next week, I'm wrong. And you can leave comments in the YouTube page or on my Twitter page or on the Philly Sports Network page or wherever you want to leave comments and say, Tyler, shut up. You were wrong. Don't show up to the parade. By the way, if they win, I'm going. I'm just letting you know. Don't show up to the parade. Give up your fandom. Whatever. I'm just telling you from an objective standpoint and a totally unbiased standpoint, I think the Patriots win this game. I'm taking the Patriots 24-20. I hope I'm wrong. Next week, we'll break the game down. We'll get into some X's and O's of what happened, what went right, what went wrong, if the Eagles are parading down Broad Street or if we're waiting till 2019 and trying to talk about Carson Wentz leading this team back to the promised land. Thanks so much for tuning in to Trust the Podcast once again. Taking the Patriots 24-20. I'm very sorry. I hope I'm wrong. I will talk to you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Trust the Podcast.